how could someone develop the confidence earlier in their career to raise concerns? Because if you so you can't rush time, right? Because then you just have to wait. So then what can people do to build that?
So first of all, it's like understanding how things work together from from an ecosystem point of view. Understand what agility means and what software quality means and how things actually add up together. And
Hi, I'm here with Zolani, and we're going to talk about common challenges in software testing. Zolani, could you please tell me a bit about yourself?
right, thanks for having me today, just being part of the podcast. So my name is Zolani. I'm based in South Africa, born in South Africa. I've been in the software testing space for close to 17 or 16 years now. I'm currently a test manager at one of the top insurance companies or organization in South Africa. So where I'm a test manager looking after testers and also just looking at the uh, standards and test processes and also mentoring testers. So that's a bit of myself, but I've been exposed in different industries in the past.
Let's get straight into it. What are the most common challenges you've seen in your software testing career?
Wow, that's quite an interesting question. There's quite a number of common challenges, but I think on top of my mind, what I can kind of like think of the main ones. I think the main one that mainly software testers are mostly faced with in terms of the common challenge will be the lack of unclear requirements. That is the top one that I can think of, because this can quite cause a lot of issues. For example, with requirements being unclear, changing of requirements, and then still testers being required to test within a sprint, and also that can affect quality badly. So lack of clear requirements can be a big pain. So that's the top one. Then also sometimes in testing we tend to get testing late. So for example, you did do your text preparations, so meaning your test cases, but then when you start to do test execution, it will come late before the sprint ends. So that puts testers in severe pressure. So that quality testing can be compromised, and sometimes it can allow spillage into the next sprint, depending on what is being tested. So that is just one, and also some test environmental issues where there's hardware issues or environmental maintenance that maybe was overlooked. So environmental issues, that's another big point. Also, regression testing as the product always evolves. So we need to make sure that our regression suite are actually being maintained properly with all the different complexities that might come with those scenarios, and prioritize automation testing. But not to prioritize it; it's a process depending on how matured is your automation. So those are the main, but the list goes on. So I can mention also test data management, where you need to preserve your data, your test data in a certain way to comply for, let's say, the POPIA, and also make sure that you've got Similinx processes where you take data from production to non-prod, make sure that the quality of data is actually good, and of course communication. I think communication is also quite crucial. So sometimes communicating within the different stakeholders, the tester, and also with the devs and the BAs. Sometimes there can be a lot of miscommunication that can be a huge bottleneck or an issue for testers. So I think, just in short, those are the top main points that I can think of right now. That I think there's a most common challenges.
And I want to touch on a few of them and around like how you've seen them be addressed. So, for example, if I understood you correctly, when working in say Agile or in Scrum, what I'm hearing you say is that let's say there's a user story that is to be developed and tested, presumably within the same sprint. Then, assuming you have a 2 week sprint, then that tester is only being given say like 1 or 2 days or at the very end of the sprint to test. So how have you or people in your team tackled that issue of testing being pushed until the end?
Cool, that's a good question. So first of all, the team should be aware, which is the Scrum team. They should be aware that there's going to be a testing risk because we don't have enough time to test, but we still need to achieve because that's what we actually prioritize from a product backlog going to sprint planning. So we need just it's a matter of prioritizing the test based on the priority and the severity of your test cases based on the product that we're testing. So you just prioritize your test in that manner. And then, of course, your product owner would also have a view of like which test you're going to start with when you're actually doing your test, and hopefully your regression testing, which is your automated regression test, actually good enough that can close some of the gaps that you might maybe encounter. So combination of prioritizing your test and also relying on your automated regression test can actually be the savior in that kind of scenario.
Can I ask? Because, like, for me, before when I came across a similar issue, one thing that helped us was breaking down user stories to be smaller and changing how people thought about estimating a user story. Because when people were thinking, how long will this take to do, they only were thinking of development time. But then when you add in testing time as well, they're like, oh, well, if we're going to add in testing time as well, maybe we have to break it into two so that there are two separate um, two separate stories that could each be completed within a sprint. Because it's interesting to see how there are different ways of tackling that
Yeah,
problem.
definitely,
Another one that
definitely.
you,
Mark, yes, yes.
another one that thing you said that caught my attention was around test environments. Because I know that can be the horrible thing with, like, say, an unstable test environment is you need to know that you can trust your test results and that they're stable and that they're up when you want them to be up. So, what have you or people in your team done to overcome test environment issues?
So one of it was like a frequent data backups that we actually do all over time, and then also just to make sure that it's always difficult to mirror production, but we make sure that
Mm,
we, together with the architects, we try to be closer as possible to what production looks like, and
mm.
also with things like network issues, we make sure that whatever, for example, like testing on the cloud, making sure that that can actually works for example, when we do mobile testing. So you actually test on the real devices on the cloud, but you should be able to be supported as a testing team that you can have that kind of infrastructure rather than testing on emulators. So that is just one example. And so really it's just like making sure that you can maintain your environments in a consistent manner, uh, rather than just like neglecting them and thinking that your results are actually good, but they're not accurate, and because that can cause a lot of risk.
By any chance, could you give some examples on, say, with mobile testing, the benefits of testing on real devices versus emulators? Like maybe the sorts of bugs that you would find on a real device that an emulator may miss, or like the consequences of the different approaches,
Cool.
or yeah.
So testing on real devices. So some people, they still, if you're testing like native apps, they still get like the physical devices and have your device farm, manual device farm, where you can physically take your devices, get your APK into a device and test it, regardless if it's iOS or on Android. And some people, if you're testing Mobi, so meaning that you're running through the web, you're still testing on emulators, but it's not really accurate. But you can test your how it renders in terms of aspect ratios on those devices, but mainly. So I'm a strong believer that in order to make sure that you get accurate results, you just need to make sure you test on real devices, but with a wide range of devices in combination of platforms, your operating system, device screen size, so you can use different. There's a lot of services that you can use that's available out there. For example, in the past, I've used Cobiton. There's Perfecto Mobile. uh, because in that way you can have just different test cases and say you want to test from, let's say, iPhone 10 to iPhone 14, and then there's a type of operating system that you want, and your result to be accurate, and you base your test data based on your user base, what you get on production. Then you try to mimic that on non-prod, based on your numbers that you get on production. You can easily extract the data from whoever who deals with that on production, extract the data so that you make sure that your user base is actually covered by using those device farm services. So I'm a strong
Mm.
fan for that, rather than, because you'll be limited. You'll be limited if you're using real devices on prem, because each and every time when there's new devices being launched, you need to keep up and buy those devices. And once you
Mm.
upgrade, you can't really go back. So the
Yeah, yeah.
maintenance, that it becomes a huge, huge, huge pain. So with having those cloud services, you can go back, you can make all those variances. It gives you an ability and freedom to rearrange your test accordingly.
Okay. Okay. And the last challenge I want to ask you more about was regarding miscommunication between, for example, developers, testers, and business analysts. How have you and your team tried to address that issue?
Right. So in the past, a user story can be written with all the details there, and for the tester actually to write test cases, or maybe to add up on the test case that we've got, meaning that you just do an extension. But one thing that I've tried to do in my team was actually to have test case reviews. So test case reviews, we don't do it anymore of just adding another step where it's going to be time consuming. It's when after sprint planning, a tester would know which user stories you need to pick, and then you write your test cases. And during that process, a BA can also do a review. So if we're actually sitting in one office, it's just a matter of a business analyst turning out your chair, coming to a tester's desk and say, okay, this is actually what to be testing. Do you think I've covered what this user story mean? So
Mm.
but we understand that you can't cover all the permutations, but then the BA should give you that confidence to say, yes, this is kind of the scenarios that I think we've got. So, but with the tester's creativity and experience, you can go further and try to come with all those different scenarios as close as to possible. But having a test case review really, really adds a lot of value. But it doesn't need to be formal, because once you start to do that, it can cause a lot of delays in the sprint, because we don't want to add another ceremony or big ceremony within that, because we've already got enough meetings, especially now with working from home. But I'm a strong, because also that gives confidence to all the stakeholders to say, we've had test case reviews. This is actually what, and there's a lot of things that can be picked up. A PA can say, you forgot about this negative validation, because maybe a certain country doesn't take this number. Maybe there's a text validation for contact number. Then you might think about it. Oh, okay, I actually forgot about this. Let me just add that. It's, so there's a lot of value for that. That can be actually a good stop for miscommunication at times. So that's just one of it.
So in your team, like, would you have people showing all of their test cases to the business analyst, or some sort of subset to make sure that you're on the same page or that you've understood things correctly?
Not all test cases. So what it done is just very like high level, just to say these are the main scenarios that I'll be covering that actually speak to this user story, because they're at a
Mm.
feature level. So we just not every at a test step level, just to say this is what I'll be covering based on the scenario. This is how I actually understand it, and then the BA can give a yeah or nay and say no. I think also you should consider this and that, and then the tester would make notes, and then more of like going through them and just scanning through them and make sure that, so it's mostly your subset of those test cases at a very high level. So the tester in that session need to ask the right questions, need to show the PA the right question. There's a technique how to do it. I do show my testers so that we can save time.
Mm. And do you have reviews with developers as well?
No, 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 not reviews with the developers, but sometimes depending on, because people come and go. In some cases, you might find like you've got a new BA in the team. So some when doing a test case review, so BA in certain cases, BA would join. Sorry, a dev would join to as part of that review, or maybe sometime when doing a demo, there can be some kind of interaction. But I really promote at test interacting with the PA, because that's where the person with the requirements understand how things should go, and then the developer is actually building the application, and we don't want the information to come with a different angle with how the developers see it.
I want to talk again about challenges, but be more specific around where you are in your career, because I would say that, in my opinion, the sorts of challenges you could expect to have can vary based on if you're in your first year versus maybe when you're more senior and maybe you're getting to people management, or have a larger scope of your work. So, for people or for testers who are early out in their career, and by that I mean, let's say their first year or two, and they're still establishing themselves, what challenges do you think they should watch out for then?
That's a good question. I still remember also when I was back in the days. I think 2008 when I started. You just you're not sure what angle you need to use when you're actually doing your testing in some scenarios. So you actually test what you're actually being given. So I think
Mhm.
one of the thing is like limited experience, or just do not limit yourself with what you've been given. Try to be inquisitive, and try to be inquisitive with whatever that's been given to you, just to be broad, and do quite a lot of research. So also new testers should also seek mentorship, training opportunities to learn and grow. So that you should just be hungry for new information to better yourself. I think that also comes with passion. So that is just one thing that I can take from that. Just seek mentorship and training opportunities and learn and grow, and also understanding different testing methodologies and approaches, right? Because if you've been given one user story to say, for example, you need to test a withdrawal process from an ATM, you just don't need to focus on that withdrawal. Just check maybe what happens if there's a deposit feature. What happens? Does it actually impact the withdrawal process? What happens? Does it take coins or just notes? Just think of different testing methodologies and approaches, rather than just focusing on one-sided thing, because on every scenario there's always two sides or many sides into it. And also learning how to write effective test cases and documentation. So that's quite important, because if you read there's different ways to write test cases. You can break down. Let's say you're writing test cases for a calculator. Someone else can write a test case for each and every button. Someone else can write it to say, when I'm doing subtraction, addition, you can break it like that. But someone else can break it and say one, two, three, four. But which one is going to be more effective? Right. So writing effective test cases so that it's going to be easier when you rerun them, when you're maintaining them. But also that comes with experience. But all of that, just pushing yourself and learning these new techniques, and just
Mm.
don't rely on basic information that you've got, even if you've got an ISTQB, because this new information always revolves. There's always new ways of doing things. Go out there, get into any test community, read, connect with people. So that is just one of the things that I'll mention around testers in their early careers.
It's funny because, like, you mentioned ISTQB and how I'd often get asked about the use of that because ultimately it does cost money to take. But then I do remember being told that one of the main values of that is being given like a common language around testing. So, for example, there are certain, I don't know, concepts such as like boundary value analysis that I think instinctively, before I started testing, it kind of makes sense to test at the boundaries or equivalence value partitioning. I think that's what equivalence partitioning, something like that. Um, but it's like it's the basics, but then it's like you don't really want people to think that that's enough. That okay, you've learned and I can stop there, because we are in like an evolving industry where you are going to have new technologies, new ideas come up, and then it becomes a case of staying relevant. So going back into challenges, what challenges do you think people should watch out for later in their career? And when I say later, let's say when they could consider themselves senior or getting into line management.
It's just quite an interesting question. So that's what I'm trying to say here. So the main one that I can think of, it's managing and mentoring junior testers, right? Or people that are coming up, or people in your team. So there's
Mm,
a specific skill or a specific way to manage that, so that the people can actually work with their hearts, and rather than and keep people motivated, right? So you must strike that balance, making sure that you can still deliver what needs you for you, what you need to do as a leader, and also just keeping people motivated, and feeling that they're part of that journey together, rather than people dragging their feet going to work. And also keeping up with the evolving technology and testing trends, because you kind of like the forefront of testing. So with if like right now, promoting, let's say for example, shifting left and say
mm,
I want to shift left, is how can we actually what's going to be the strategy for us to shift left and to focus on DevSecOps. I'm just making an example here. So rather than to be caught with your eyes open, so it's important that you need to be the leader in that regard, and dealing with organizational changes and process challenges. So you've seen in my past, I've seen quite a lot of restructuring, like
mm,
things changing with a new executive maybe coming on board, and then let's say we're using Scale Agile framework, or maybe moving to Safe. So that kind of like changes everything. But those changes, they start from the top. Being able to stay calm and still, because the core of testing doesn't change, but the mindset can actually disconnect the testing team. So it all comes with you as a leader, to kind of like to still to keep things balanced in that view, even if there's changes, and still remain calm, and show a positive message to the team, and keeping them motivated. So for me, those are the top three that I can think of that people should watch out in their late careers. Yeah, those are the top ones, especially the evolving technology and testing trends. For me, that's the top one.
yeah, because I know, like, say, involving technology and trends, you do have AI at the moment, which seems to be really one that affects a lot of people potentially. Because I know you'll have new tools constantly, but they're for a specific area. For example, mobile testing. Or I know another thing that I've seen becoming more popular is codeless test automation. But then not all teams opt. I know not all teams opt for that. But with AI, I think that's been one where I've been thinking about how you can incorporate it. Like how I think there are like these silly LinkedIn posts about it's going to replace testers, and I said, well, I said AI is a tool. Ultimately, these new technologies are tools that you just need to learn how to use it, not just be threatened by it. Now, I'm curious about what do you wish sorry. What do you wish you knew in the first year of your career?
Really was just thinking outside the box, and having a confidence of actually defending testing within my team. So sometimes I think back in the day there was that working on waterfall, and everything just being thrown at testing after devs would to finish their dev and then throwing at testing. Sometimes just that confidence of pushing back. So I never had that in my first 2 years of my career, but with understanding testing. So and saying and showing that the importance of quality in our product. So that is just one point that I felt like maybe if I gained my confidence earlier at that time, it was I was going to add more value. Sometimes at a early stage, you're being told maybe it's not important to test a certain scenario because it's not going to be affected, but the user story actually says something else. But then as a tester, maybe you would like not do it, but that's not the right thing. So if I had the confidence, in short, I would definitely tackle it on. And then also another thing is we've got a lot of tools available to us, either open source or that paid tools that can actually make your work easier. So if I knew that at an earlier stage, I could have made things work more efficient, rather than actually trying to break my brain around it. So that is just the top two things, and also being able to open up, if you see that a certain story when doing estimation that is going to take longer, rather than actually underestimating and putting yourself under pressure. So just speaking up for yourself. So those are the top three things that I can think of at this stage.
All right. I like your comment around the tools because, I mean, I guess a tricky thing there is there's so many different tools out there that can help us with, say, our productivity around testing. But then you don't know what you don't know. So I know there are some problems that you might not realize is a tool that solves the problem of what's taking you time and effort. But then I know with some things that work with me, my husband's seen me suffering through something, and he's like, "Oh, there's a tool for that." My husband's a developer, some context. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's good," because I've been like muttering away under my breath. Your comment around the confidence was interesting to me because I've always felt like my confidence to say no or to question things came with experience. So like it's not like I was like super unconfident in my first year or so, but I know like over time when you're doing a good job, when you get that feedback or that validation from others that you're on the right track, and then you start to think, well, then my opinion matters. That maybe if I have a concern, it's valid. And you said you wish you had that confidence earlier. How do you feel like you could have developed? How could someone develop the confidence earlier in their career to raise concerns? Because if you so you can't rush time, right? Because then you just have to wait. So then, what can people do to build that?
I guess that's a very good question. So first of all, it's like understanding how things work together from from an ecosystem point of view. Understand what agility means and what software quality means, and how things actually add up together, and looking at like what role do you actually play in the whole ecosystem, and understanding the importance of software quality. So if then you first ask yourself those questions and you get deeper into that process, so you understand, this goes more of like doing research. I've actually had in the past junior testers that have challenged me, that have actually liked their personalities during interviews. When I get the person actually started to join us in our team, someone would just go beyond and above within second week after induction. Those I'm talking about someone who's actually had maybe 6 months of experience as an intern somewhere, but the attitude and the person asking the right questions, and understanding actually what role do you actually have to play. It's just understanding the bigger picture, just not going into a place closed minded. I think in that way, it's easier to ask the right questions. So in the past, I think I came from a support role. Then I was a BA. There was a BA for about 7 months. Then I changed to becoming a tester, and then I was just given a user story to test. Then I would test that, and I don't even understand what are those different ceremonies mean much within the agile context. Then later I understood that, okay, in order for us to improve, retros are actually fundamental. This is the power of retros. This is why we're doing backlog refinement. Oh, I see my power. So for you to dig that, but if you kind of like understood it earlier before you put your foot in, even if you don't fully understand it 100%, but having an edge that would put you in an advantage.
Lastly, I'm curious about any career mistakes that you've made that you'd like others to learn from.
So first of all, it's going to be linked to what I said before. Not speaking up when issues are identified at times. So you feel like an issue is being identified, but maybe a developer, senior developer said to you, "Oh no, so you won't get this on production because we won't ever emulate an issue like that. Is because you're running maybe on a lower environment that doesn't have enough
Mm.
capacity." So it's just okay. There's no need for me to log it. So not speaking up. So it is important to communicate problems and concerns. So that is just one point, and also neglecting to develop automation skills earlier. So just like more comfortable doing manual testing, functional testing, API testing, as like seeing now automation increasing high, and then now starting to catch up at my later years, and so that is just one thing that I probably just learned from, and also focusing solely on text execution without considering the bigger picture. So you're just testing what you're testing, but in terms of the business process from end to end, what it says to the customers, you don't fully understand, but it's just testing a bit. That's one piece that you're just looking at the requirements and your test cases, and then you just testing it, not understanding the bigger picture. So like right now, as I grow into my career, I first understand exactly why are we doing that change before it comes in. What impact would it have on business? So when you're actually doing it, you're actually doing it with understanding. So even the effort that you put in is totally different from the effort that you put in without understanding.
If anyone wants to get in contact with you or learn more about you, where could someone get in contact with you, Zolani?
Right. So I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So you just can search Zolani Ratya. Zolani, Ratya. So that's Zolani. Surname Ratya. So all my details are there. And my email address is also ratya01 at gmail.com, which is my surname, 01 digits at gmail.com. So I'm contactable there. So I'm actively there on LinkedIn. So I'll definitely respond to any messages.
Sweet. Thank you very much for your time. And I'll make sure to add your email and your LinkedIn uh, URL in the description so people could also click on it there. Thanks heaps for your time.
Cool. Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.